from the CyberHub bunker and studio, you're tuning in to the CyberHub Podcast. And now for your host and CISO, James Azar.
Well, good morning, folks. What it is, and welcome to another episode of the CyberHub Podcast. Sorry, we were at a band yesterday. I was traveling. There was bad weather here in Dallas, Texas, all the flooding and everything going on. We couldn't get a show off the ground in the quality I wanted to. So I decided to ask for forgiveness. We're here today, ready to hit you with all the latest cybersecurity news from the perspective of the CISO. Really, I don't have anything to sell. I don't sell anything, right? I'm not a vendor. I'm not a security company. I'm a CISO. I'm a practitioner day in and day out. That's what I do. And I do this show to kind of give you my point of view, and I think many practitioners' point of view on how we read beyond the headlines into what it really means for our organization. So make sure you subscribe to our channel on your favorite podcast listening platform. Go to youtube.com/CyberHub Podcast. Subscribe there. Every subscription does help us. That's how really we monetize this show. So really appreciate your support. Thank you. Don't have my cup of espresso. I'm still in my hotel. Couldn't make it to the office in time to record this for y'all this morning. So whatever you're drinking this morning, I hope you enjoyed. I hope it's yours. Coffee cup cheers, and let's get into this morning's show. We'll start off with Microsoft sharing details of the critical ChromeOS vulnerability here. So this specific story coming out of Microsoft was published on Friday with technical details of a critical ChromeOS vulnerability that could be exploited to create a denial of service attack. In limited cases, could also be used for remote code execution. Track to CVE 2022-2587, a CVSS score of 9 or 0.8, described as an out-of-bounds write. The vulnerability was addressed with the release of a patch in June of this year. The issue was identified in the Chromium OS audio server component and could be triggered using malformed metadata associated with songs. According to Crass, resides between the operating system and the advanced Linux sound architecture to route audio to newly attached peripherals that support audio. Just showing you the scope of these things when people say we're Chrome based, or I know that's kind of like a trend of new IT management is giving people Chromebooks, and we operate off the entire kind of Google suite, and it makes things convenient. That's not always the case. Microsoft does have a bone to pick here. After all, Chromium is definitely a direct competitor of theirs. And so, you want to be very balanced in how you view the report. But looking at the technical data of the report, you do see that there still exists significant challenges within the software game of how to deploy OSs. And there's a slew of challenges around putting together the perfect non-vulnerable OS that doesn't exist, that won't exist. Bluetooth, audio, Wi-Fi, network, backdoors are all going to be common. This issue has been patched, and if you haven't patched your Chromium devices, you may want to do so now. CISA's warning of active exploitation of Palo Alto's network's PAN-OS vulnerability. CISA on Monday added the security flaw impacting Palo Alto's PAN-OS to its known exploited vulnerability catalog. That's now like 1,000 vulnerabilities, right? Like if you're going to do a known exploited vulnerability catalog, don't just add vulnerabilities to it. I think that's one thing CISA really needs to get better at, or CISA, whatever you guys want to call them, right? They should really be focused on active exploited vulnerabilities for the time period. The high severity, which is tracked to CV 2022-0028, CVSS score of 8.6, is a URL filtering policy misconfiguration that could allow an unauthenticated remote attacker to carry out reflected and amplified TCP denial of service attacks. The weakness impacts many versions, and parts of the updates have been released this month: PAN-OS 10.2, 10.1, 10.0, 9.1, 9.0, and 8.1. Palo Alto says they're actively fixing these and have some workarounds available within their documentation. Definitely worth a look at, but also lets you know your security partners are just as vulnerable as anyone else. A fake DDoS protection prompt on hacked WordPress sites is actually delivering RATs. According to Sakori, the warning of the increase in fake distributed denial of service protection notification that led to the delivery of the malware, the DDoS protection notification, are web pages that the browsers use to check if you're a valid visitor. We've seen these from Cloudflare and many others. While they may seem like a nuisance, what the threat actors have discovered, they lack zero creativity in the way they operate, is why don't we use that, which is kind of like a trust piece, kind of, verify that you're human, in order to deliver a Trojan. And that's exactly what they're doing. Once you click Once the user clicks on the fake pop-up, a Trojan is downloaded on their computer in the form of an ISO file, and then the victim is instructed to open the file, obtain a verification code in order to access the destination website. Someone who's security savvy would know that at that point they've been compromised, not to do anything any further. An average user would think, oh, wow, it's probably a new security feature. Just shows you the disconnect we have as security practitioners to our users. I discover new things every single day, especially when I'm, around when I know remote work's a thing, but for me, when I'm around my coworkers, we're in the same environment, when I'm around all of my colleagues, is when I discover really how vulnerable I am from a CISO perspective. And there can't be anything more valuable than that. CrowdStrike has an issue after a ridiculous disclosure process, according to this story. A security firm has disclosed the detail of an issue affecting a CrowdStrike product after what it described a ridiculous vulnerability disclosure process. CrowdStrike has given some clarification following that. So security firm Medezro discovered an issue related to CrowdStrike's Falcon endpoint detection and response product, specifically the problems related to the Falcon sensor, which is the lightweight agent deployed on each end device. The sensor can be configured with an uninstall protection, which prevents its removal without a special token. They discovered that an attacker with admin privileges can bypass the token check on Windows devices, uninstall the sensor in an effort to remove protection provided by CrowdStrike. The firm admitted that the overall risk of the vulnerability is limited. I don't know why that would be limited. That's pretty significant there if you're able to get past it, especially, unauthenticated and uninstall the protection in order to carry through and elevate privileges. My point of view, at least. In early June, Medezro started asking CrowdStrike for an alternative way to report its finding, one that didn't involve a hacker one or signing an NDA. Medezro ultimately sent its finding via email in late June, but CrowdStrike initially could not reproduce the issue and later said it didn't appear to be a valid vulnerability. Later, Medezro later tested its finding on a more recent version of CrowdStrike, noticed that the vendor had actually taken some steps to prevent exploitation, including by flagging Medezro's proof of concept exploit as malicious. Medezro said it managed to bypass their countermeasures and decided to make the finding public. And that's what happens when your vulnerability management program doesn't match your company ethics. Classic case here of, we're all in this game together, and yet we can't seem to speak the same language. And we wonder why our adversaries are unanimously successful. There's the classic reason there, folks. And finally, suspected Iranian hackers targeted several Israeli organizations for espionage, Iran threat activity. We talked about this story last week. There's a little bit more details around this. So Mandian is now categorizing the moniker as UNC 3890, which is believed to conduct operations that align with Iranian interests. The collected data may be leveraged to support various activities, from hack and leak to enabling kinetic warfares. Specifically, they're targeting the shipping industries and the aviation industries and so many more there as well. So that cyber warfare continues. Folks, that's it for our show today. We'll be back with a whole lot more tomorrow. Until then, have a great rest of your day. And most importantly, thank you for tuning in. Make sure to subscribe and stay cyber safe.
We love feedback, so make sure to connect with us on social media and subscribe to our podcast on your favorite podcast listening platform.